being here. It's really wonderful to see everybody. We were hoping for 100 people. 100 people signed up, so there's about 110 of us in here just now, isn't there? Well, maybe not. But so my name's John Player, like the cigarettes. Some of the younger folk won't know that, but my grandfather died of lung cancer. He's buried in a grave in Glasgow, and his tomb looks like his stone looks like the John Player special packets, gold on it. He died of lung cancer. He died of lung cancer at 55, which was the age so many men died in Glasgow on the West Coast. So I never met him. So this is personal. This is a personal stuff. This. So I've named it Ghetto Defendant. It's not heroin or butt-fast pity, not tear gas nor baton charge that stops you taking the city. It's heroin pity. So it's not by accident. It's not by accident. After 1919, there was a quietism that Dek so ably put forward. Has moved from Scottish Labour colleges to the WE and reformism, really. But it's not by accident. This is what the proposition really is, you know. So if Gemma and Alex and I are involved in a recovery group called the Sheer Learning for Democracy, and we teach critical adult education. We look at the structural issues beyond the 12-step programme. We look at the hows and whys and whose interest is it? And that's the question I want. In whose interest is it that we're all fucked? This is really excuse the language, but let's get real. This is a Dane anarchist. This is a Dane anarchist. Scottish anarchist, by the way. But the thing is that about E.P. Thompson, I have to take issue about E.P. Thompson. He called it the making of the English working class, his heroic, historic text, because the history of the Scottish working class is different. It's different. It's a different class history. So, Gemma, we'll hit that. That's the clash. The clash. We'll get back to that hardcore punk straight edge and towards a less fucked up society. That's so there's now a kind of movement coming about straight edge, abstinent anarchism. That if we want to make social revolution, we've got to get clean. So that this is by Nick Riotfag, which I really Nick Riotfag, I wish you were here for that. Okay, next one. So there he is there. Towards a less fucked up world, sobriety and anarchist struggle, which was really initiated by the Black Panthers. Capitalism plus dope equals genocide. So it's in the interest of the capitalist class that we're doped out of heads, especially the Black Panthers, but we'll come back to that. So looking back in history, there was a mass insurrection in Scotland in 1820 with the leaders being hung, people being deported and jailed, and in an attempt for universal suffrage, for parliamentary reform, for home rule. And it really was the catalyst towards how Chartism moved towards reformism rather than revolutionary insurrection, because don't go playing with the guns. The British Army is waiting out there and it weighs 1,300 tons. So the British Army moved in and annihilated really. So Chartism, which was after many of the same demands of the Scottish insurrection of 1820, really flourished, and it flourished with a temperance movement as well. The temperance movement was very allied, because back in these days, workers could be paid in beer. You could be paid in beer. Beer and alcohol suffused society so much that the Charterists, so Charterism in Scotland, it really caught up in Scotland. There was 100,000 people went to hear the Chartist leaders in the 1830s in Glasgow Green. And the Chartists really were initiated this idea about, which was, and I've discussed it with Sarah, but it's almost a Calvinistic Presbyterian self-elect thing about temperance. That you can't create social revolution, You can't create social change if you're pissed out your head. So it's quite straightforward. It's quite straightforward. So next slide. So that's the idea of the temperance movement. And the temperance movement, there was a total abstinence society in the 19th century and continuing into the 20th century in Aberdeen. So this idea about the self-elect, this idea about the autodidact, this idea about adult education being rooted in sobriety because of really the horror and the day-to-day indignation people were faced with, the way they dealt with their suffering, the way they dealt with their alienation, the way they dealt with their exploitation was through the bevy, through whisky in the main for the Scottish working class. So it was whisky right up until 1919, and then this is I'm so grateful to Sarah Chi that this is written also the history of drinking, the Scottish pubs in 1700, which is actually a political text, and it's by Anthony Cook who wrote the only text on the 100 years or so of adult education in Scotland. I really recommend it because it goes into in great detail the temperance movement as he does in the other text. So how do you create social revolution? How do you create social revolution? How do you and then mainly through the charter, the chartists positioned themselves with the liberals really, and until Labour found, working people found they didn't have any representation. So that one of the initiators of this representation was Keir Hardie, and Keir Hardie really represented the Independent Labour Party, and Dek talked a wee bit about it, which is again, this is all about subjugation, the subjugation history of our people, the subjugated knowledges that we need to unveil. As adult educators, Wendy, as adult educators in the trade unions, we need to unveil our history. We need to, because it's deliberately, it's not by accident. None of this is by accident. I don't think any of this is by accident. So Keir Hardie, Home Rule for Scotland. This is the founder of the Labour Party, the founder, and temperance reform. So the temperance movement had two ambitions. Moral assuage. So I'm going to persuade you to stop bevying so much. I'm going to persuade you to, or I'm going to initiate prohibition. And this is where my lovely pal Joyce will come in. The failures of prohibition. But James Maxton, one of the leading ILP leaders, moved in the House of Commons bills for prohibition, and prohibition. The temperance movement did succeed in stopping drinking on a Sunday in Scotland. So it had the prohibitionists had some success. It wasn't just a failed social movement. It wasn't a failed social movement, but it was very identified with a moral kind of judgment. It was very identified. It was identified with the Presbyterians and almost a Calvinistic kind of approach. But so, especially Keir Hardie was anti-monarchist. He was anti-monarchist and anti the ruling class in Scotland, and he was an advocate of temperance reform. That again, it's not tear gas nor baton charge that stops us taking the city at buckfast and heroin and picnic. So, boom. And then, excuse the date here, 1879 to 19. We're not there yet, John! We're not there. If Extinction Rebellion are right, which I really recommend everybody get stuck into, and John's Extinction Rebellion, we're not going to make that figure that John died in. But, so again, it's part of the subjugation. He was jailed for the proclamation of the Soviet in 1919 in George Square, where they took English tanks, and it's nothing to do with Mansfield or the English, but they kept Scottish tanks in Pollock Shields. They wouldn't let the Scottish, in case there was a federation between the workers and the soldiers. So it was put down and he was jailed. And I think Harry McShane, who I used to go and see in the 80s, he jumped ship and as an adventure. And I don't think Harry was temperate, really, but it was a great.
John McClane was sober.
That's my point. That was just coming to John McClane was absolutely teetotal. He came really from the church in Glasgow and was educated through the churches before really getting into a secular and Marxist analysis of economics. And when he was giving lectures, I mean, Dek would know the numbers, but it wasn't just 50 folk, if you know what I mean. It was packed out in Govan Town Hall and stuff like that. I heard there was 1,000 people at some of his lectures. But it was very didactic. I'm being didactic. You have to have an input. But it was very the words of the worthy, really. So, and this is the thing about the Independent Labour Party. But the thing about the Independent Labour Party was opposed to the war. So that the irony is that the licensing bodies, the breweries, and this is where Finlay's really good, totally supported the First World War. They've really supported the. They promoted their staff to go and fight in the First World War, free drink for anybody in the war, and they disregarded, they whipped up this, what is similar, the continuity and change of right-wing populism. They whipped up this antagonism towards the Independent Labour Party, who were the biggest tea drinkers in Scotland. They loved drinking tea. So this really was the important bit to it, the trauma. The body keeps the score, the trauma of the Somme, where 1 million people were killed, and they're not sure how many Scots were killed there. You know, give you a kilt and some pipes and some whiskey, and you're that first over the top. Do you know what I mean? So the breweries and the licensing board were very allied to the notion of the British state and British patriotism by the ILP were again it. So we're moving on with the ILP, and the thing about the ILP, I just have to say, it wasn't just a Christian socialist heaven on earth sort of organisation. It had a radical wing that sent volunteers to fight Franco and were allied with the poem, the Partido Obra Unidad Marxista. And that's Jimmy Maxton up there. And next one, wind up soon. Right, and be blunt, why don't you? So that's the feminist secretariat of the Brew, whose leader was tortured to death by the Stalinists in Madrid in '39. So there's this evolution that we're not told about. I mean, have people come across this stuff? There's this link to libertarian communism, linked to anarcho-syndicalism that Dek talks about in Glasgow through the Independent Labour Party and through adult education organisations. It's subjugated. We're not allowed to know. It's not by accident. So next one. So that's Harry, and I was going to. Harry McShane died in the Church of Scotland place just down the road, and when he got away from 1919, he met up with Raya Dianska, and they developed a form of autonomous Marxism close to the stuff that Dek talks about. So quickly moving on. So myself and Gemma had the delight really to see this, and I really recommend it. We need to show it in Scotland. It's called The History of Crack and Smack. And what Edwards is talking about, and I really recommend it, is one of the first things we should do is get the book called The Politics of Heroin, how the CIA are involved. It's not by accident. And the next slide, oh, sorry, it's the wrong, this is the wrong, but the next slide was about the history of the black. No, that's wrong. But that'll do. It's about, I'll put it on the rubber. But the thing is, it's not by accident that in times of crisis, like the rise of the Black Panthers in the end of the 60s and the Vietnam War, that heroin floods the streets, it's cheaper than marijuana. It's cheaper than marijuana, and this is his argument. And then Edward's argument is, after the riots in 1981, or the resistances and rebellions in Brixton, there's a flooding of crack and smack on the streets, and the movement is dispelled, it's got rid of. So it's not by accident, and the question is, why us? Why do we have the highest drug deaths in Western Europe, if not the world? And that's where my friend and colleague Joyce will come in and take up the here and now. Thank you very much.
How do you follow that? What? Blue, it's blue.
And while we're doing that,
I hope I managed to make some links between all of these things. So I'm Joyce, I've been involved in Dixonville for about 30 years. I obviously was a young woman when I started, working mainly with women and children, women who are drug using women and homeless people, mainly who were using alcohol at that point. And of course this is the crossover now, is that we don't have big separate populations. We have people using lots of substances all together at the same time. But yeah, how do you follow John? I'm not sure. I'm going to offer you some invitations, I think, that is what I'm going to do. And then at the end we've got a question, and we really want to hear from some people about how we take where we're at now in terms of recovery and also the real massive crisis that we have about drugs, particularly in this city, but specifically in Scotland, and what we do with that, and what the role of adult education is within that, and adult learning. So I'll say a wee bit, but I do think this is I hope it's a hopeful ending of the day, yes? So this is about pedagogies of hope and recovery, but it's also about not leaving folk behind. Yeah? So that's kind of what I'm inviting. Okay, so John's talked a lot about this. The kind of background. I just love that picture, lips that touch liquor shall not touch my mouth. Look at them, they're just like, what an incredible bunch of women, aren't they? Where did they get them from? So this idea of temperance, and I suppose what this links to in some ways is these paradigm shifts that we've made over the last 150 years around alcohol, and John's kind of outlined that. I mean, alcohol was itself seen as the demon, wasn't it? It was the substance itself that held the demonization came from the substance, and it allowed people to make this progress into complete destruction, and alcohol and drink steals children's food, and all these amazing quotes about it. And of course, John also spoke a wee bit about the attempts to criminalise alcohol, and we succeeded in criminalising drugs, but we didn't quite get there with alcohol. And in America, clearly, people did. The American government did at the same time as cash crop growing marijuana, were actually prohibiting the sale of alcohol. And you can see mass popular uprising against that. We demand beer! So you can imagine if that had been done, maybe there would have been popular uprising, I don't know. Maybe in Glasgow, I don't know. And I think there's some really, and John's covered some of this, so I won't spend too long, because I want to get to where we're at now. But, I think we saw, and I think the Independent Labour Party particularly saw the drink as social waste. It was a social waste. So, it was a waste of the economic, physical, mental and moral elements of all of our lives, and it was a deeply political issue. And the invitation really comes from Keir Hardie. He says, the man who can take a glass or let it alone is under no moral obligation for the sake of the weaker brother who cannot do so, to let it alone. So here's the invitation that Keir Hardie's making. Let's all not take drink. or in fact any other substances. And I want you to sit with that invitation, because some of you may already be there, yeah, because there have been many people here, many of us in recovery, yeah, who will not be taking drink or drugs. And what he's saying in response to his stepfather's own drinking, so he's an affected family member, yeah, is we should all not imbibe. So those heading to the double after, God Nasha, I'm just offering you all that invitation, yeah? Okay. What probably happened is that we moved from seeing the drink as the problem to almost individualising people as the problem. Yes, and that's what we've been. We've criminalised drug use. We've seen individuals as the problem in this kind of neoliberal discourse. And I think what has happened is a very powerful revolution in the last, since 2008 really, since our drug strategy changed, a revolution of recovery. Yeah? And we have some people here, we've got Anne-Marie from the Recovery Consortium as well. I couldn't possibly, I could spend 15 hours telling you what the recovery movement's doing. It's vast, it's huge, it's epic, it's amazing, yeah? It's absolutely, there's communities, there's colleges, there's cafes, there's hubs, there's whole communities there's a new community being established down in Ayrshire about people living together in community, and you know, I just can't begin to tell you the amount of adult education, the amount of learning that's happening that we probably need to capture much more robustly, actually. What's going on? What are people doing? We need to capture that really, really, really strongly. We've created experts by experience, and we're literally building communities.